Hello and welcome again to another journey into the nighttime of year. First and foremost, I want to toast to all of you who are taking this journey with me, and to our muse, which is the darkness itself. Cheers, everyone. And I'd like to thank all of you again for hopping on board for this journey. This video is going to be not too terribly long. I'm going to try to keep these videos relatively short whenever it's possible. But I wanted to go over some of the inspiration for this course and where it really comes from for me. And I'll delve deeper into these themes as we go along. But my goal today is to give a little bit of the foundation around where I'm coming from in terms of the overall orientation for this journey, as well as a bit of a look at some of the things that are coming forward for those of you that might be interested in doing the rite that I composed last year. You are welcome to amend it to whatever your needs are, but it's the one that is linked there, amongst the rest of the materials for the journey, at the Crossroads, so we'll go over that a little bit as well. But to begin with, I wanted to speak to you about what inspired me to do this course. There was a really great, and I'm going to share some of these recordings from this conference that happened while I was living in Edinburgh. There was a really lovely conference I attended at the Scottish Storytelling Centre, put on by a group called the Tabashir Collective, and its focus was on the themes that arise around this time of year, this time that we think of as Halloween or All Hallows, or even Samhain, however we might want to label it. There are many ways to say that word, and it's called that in several derivations in this part of the world. I live in the UK, but the reason I wanted to put forth this idea of the nighttime of year is that some of the things I was learning through the people that spoke and presented and told stories at this conference event was the fact that we often think of this time, this moment. We focus maybe on summer's end and the beginning of the nighttime of year, because it's true, it is like a hinge moment, and that's what I'd really like to emphasize. The liminality of this time is very powerful. And what I learned from attending that event, some of the scholars and folklorists and various people that spoke there, was how the themes that are explored at this moment in time is actually much more of an extended encounter with the nighttime of year. And I love this expression, the nighttime of year, because it does really bring forward the ideas that at this moment we are moving into, in the northern hemisphere at least, the nighttime of year. And depending on how far north you are, the effects of the pervasive darkness and its duration is really profound and intense. And something that I started to note more and more was the purpose of maybe this moment, but also traditions that in various parts, at least in the north, where I'm more familiar with the lore in this region, in these regions, there's an extended encounter. It's not something that just happens in 1, 2, or 3 nights. It goes on, because if we think about it, we carry on into the nighttime of the year. It's almost 2 full seasons, ultimately, of autumn and winter. And this is that threshold. We are at the threshold, the gateway into the nighttime of year. And this is the context that really got me to think about, why is it that holidays, the winter holidays, the dead and the forces of the night often will show themselves, and I started to like this idea that when there is less light, those spirits that are held within place by light are able to roam more freely, more to more expanse, if you will, at that time. And so the inspiration for having it be an extended encounter really comes out of this, rather than what I think a lot of us are compelled to do, which is we have our celebrations that we engage in around this time of year, our practices that we engage in around this time of year. And it's a one shot, one go, job done, move on to the next thing. And my point is that I really wanted to linger in this time, because living so far north, especially the 5 years that I had lived in Scotland, the level to which the night and darkness becomes so present within one's life really has to be understood. And I think there's two directions that we'll explore in this. One is the pervasiveness of the night and its invitation to engage with it. It's not always the most gentle invitation. We're going to look at it in a gentler form tonight, or in this chat, but it's not always so gentle. Not something that we need to sit with and find, our footing with as well, and know where to tread and where to not, and when not as well, which is something we'll explore. There needs to be respect on both sides, clearly. The point, though, I'd like to draw forward is the idea that there are two movements. One is moving closer together around the source of fire that we keep in this time of year, the hearth. And to me, like, the symbol of that, more than anything else, is what happens with myself and my husband and our feline companion, is that we get cozy, and our cat Phoebe, she's very into ensuring that we spend a decent amount of time all cuddled up in one basket together. And this is one movement that I would like us to spend some time with. The other is for those of us that are magically inclined or spirit work inclined. I'd say that there's another, which is being drawn out or drawn into the receptivity of the night and the darkness. And the last bit I'd like to say, just to frame the course in a larger way, is there's some, this phrase was coined, and I forget the sociologist or anthropologist that first spoke about it, but he spoke about if I recall, I'll put it somewhere underneath the video here, but the phrase that was used was the colonization of the night. And if you think about it, a lot of what that sociologist or anthropologist was really referring to was the power of electricity and scheduling and work, especially, to get it so that there was no need to pay heed to the light and the dark in a natural way, that we could overrun that. And I don't mean to say this to make any grand statement, really, or that this project is moving away from that uh, in its entirety. But I think that it's something to consider, how much time we give for the contemplation of darkness, for the being in darkness, for experiencing what is dark within us, and what is the invitation that is there within that space, that tangle, if you will. It's not hard for us to imagine how dependent we've become on artificial light to really rid us of darkness. So sitting with that, what I'd really like us to think about is what darkness invites us towards. We can do this in many ways by thinking about the night as an archetype. We can think of it in an archetypal way. And by that I mean that there's so many things that we associate with darkness. Some are quite delightful and bring so much intrigue and mystery into our lives. And other aspects of it are very frightening to us. And it's interesting that those two maybe poles, if you will, of that archetype are definitely sharing something that is quite similar. And I think that is, if we want to, and we find it useful to consider what is the archetype of night, and we'll look at this in many different ways. But the context of this time, and particularly thinking about it in the place that you live, and this encounter is this idea, for me at least, of the hinge, summer's end, and moving into the nighttime of year, and our ability to inhabit the liminal, to really use this moment to step through a gateway into the nighttime of year. And there is some cultural precedence for allowing that to be the entire month of November. The entire month of November is Samhain, that the entire month of November is about this encounter that we're going through. And then I believe it spills over into the celebrations, the festivities, the dancing with time and place that we experience as we move further into the nighttime of year and out of it again. So what I'd like you to think about is this moment as an invitation towards a metaphor for an extended encounter with darkness and the night. And to me, metaphor has a very powerful place within what we call a spell. It's ultimately a spell that we're able to invoke or cast, a spirit we're able to invoke, and a spell that we're able to cast through metaphor. And using metaphor, I'd like us to begin, this idea of the gateway into the nighttime of year. Because I think that a lot of what we're working with is, when we think of as this realm of things, I think is so ripe for this kind of activity, which I'll speak to more and more as we go on. But I wanted to bring forward some of the many words, that we tie to darkness, and speak to that a little bit, just to give us a flavor of some of this, and then lead us into a journey, if you will, that'll give us a taste of what we might encounter for ourselves within that darkness. and then end on a couple of things as it relates to the practices and to the stuff that we can focus on if we'd like to. First and foremost, I want you to think that everything I ever say, everything that I ever say you could do this, entirely invitational. Entirely. I also don't mind how you adapt and make these things fit your own purposes and needs. I also don't want anyone to think that I'm speaking from a sense of authoritativeness, because I don't think the night really responds well to that mode anyway. So that being said, we can just soften some of that. And the last piece is that many of the things that I speak about might not be things that we need to worry about doing ourselves. It's not important that we do everything. This is all an invitation. All an invitation. And I very much hope that you can feel that from what I'm trying to hold here, for us, is the ability to engage with an extended encounter in this metaphor that links the more abstract to our lived in relation world. And we're going to try to bring it closer and closer together as we go throughout. So darkness, obscurity, murk, black, tenebrosity, uncertainty, shadow, shade, umbra, unseen, invisible, disguised, ghostly, wraith-like, imponderable, intangible, masked, concealed, occult, esoteric, lurking, veiled, shrouded, night, darkness. And the circle goes over, round and round. Maybe it's a spiral. I would love to know words that you bring forth in this spell. Some of the lore that we'll sit with a lot, at least the part I would like to introduce, comes from the place we call Iceland. And in particular there, I'm interested in the way in which darkness is understood to be the place where spirits live, that they inhabit that space, and that this time of year is so open to us being able to have profound encounters with the spirit world. And it's not just one night or two or three, it's an entire season that we can dance with that. So just take a moment to find some centering or grounding. Maybe you don't have time to engage in this now, that's okay. You can go ahead to the end. Maybe to help you do this, it's best if you focus on the sensation of your body held within the seat or posture that you're sitting or standing in this moment. And sinking down into that restedness that is there. One of the first things that I'd also like to introduce is our own visual darkness that we encounter whenever we close our eyes. And how the extended darkness that we'll be engaging with has very similar qualities to this darkness that we see when we close our own eyes. That it has the capacity to be a screen for our own mind and all the emotion and all the content that is projected onto that dark screen. But similarly, it can be a kind of mirror, a black mirror, that we can look into and receive messages and insights from things that are both us but not us, and also things that aren't us, but we are able to connect with. And lastly, the one that I would like us to feel in this moment is that darkness that we see when we close our eyes can also be a gateway, which we can travel deeper or to many other places. But tonight, just focusing gently your attention on the darkness that appears before you visually when you close your eyes, the presence. Or use it as a gateway to a dark autumn wood, a thick wood. The trees of this place are not that old. They grow up but close to the earth. And while you can't see them, those trees and the vegetation are filled with ivy and many vines that also create deeper darkness. We step into this place, stark wood, prepare ourselves with an encounter with an emissary of the night. A hooded figure approaches you, face shrouded in darkness, clothed in black. This figure invites you to follow them deeper into this wood, your nose filling with the smell, cool, moist air as they turn away from you to lead you down a dark path through this wood, taking you deeper into the darkness, the shadow, this very earthy place. I invite you to be receptive to the sensuousness of the night, to the way that our entire being awakens in the dark. Let go, if you want, thou can, any anxiety or fear at this time. And instead, feel the excitement, the desire to encounter the night. You're led along a path, going up gently and then down, having to maneuver through these vines of ivy, between the thick wood, deeper and deeper. The emissary of the night turns back towards you, face of shadow, reaches out a hand to you. If you feel called, you can take that hand. Be open to what you receive when you touch this hand of the emissary of darkness and of the night. Feel the expansive experience of selfhood in the darkness. Feel how the animal within you is so attuned and awake in this time. Feel the sensuousness of the thick night. That surrounds you. The receptivity, perhaps the untamable wildness of this unknown space that feels so familiar. Take a moment, recall, shift your attention back to the darkness behind your eyelids. Remember that you can go back into that wood at any time and bring your experience with you. So the things that I'd like us to consider is how part of this journey is around increasing our own ability to open up to our own receptivity. And for me, this has a lot to do with the darkness that I think is so ripe within us, is the ability to be receptive. I don't mean this to say passive in any way, but there is something about it that I think might be useful for some of us to sit with, is this receptivity. And also the way in which the night and the darkness really encourages us to remember that we are animal, and an invitation for us to become animal. And in that way, I'd like, for those of you that do have animals in your life, really be open to the idea that they have so much to share with you. I'm sure that you don't need me to tell you that if you have an animal in your life, but at the same time, that I think they have a lot to say around this time and the energy of this time. So as I said, it's all an invitation, but just briefly, for those that are drawn to do at the Crossroads, the way that this rite is set up is it's got a minimal amount of offerings that you can make, and it's sort of a very simple ritual protocol. But I do think, having done it myself and having had feedback from many of the others who have done it, that it is very effective in terms of creating attention getting, and then also a context by which you can go off and do more throughout this time of year. But the idea there is that there are three moments at least that we could maybe focus on in terms of this moment that we're about to enter into. One is All Hallows Eve, which occurs as the sun sets on October 31st. And the God form that I would like us to, rather than straight up just saying, invoke the devil, I work with a form that I call the Master of the Crossroads. And I think that this idea of the Master of the Crossroads being a shepherd and piper to the wandering, a band of devil spirits and souls of sorrow and delight, I think really does encapsulate a lot of what this God form has at least shown me over many times, but also in a way that is open enough for you to insert your own understanding and have your own encounter with the Master of the Crossroads. And the point of this one is to make offering to the Master of the Crossroads, their party and their kin, as their feasted honored guest, or honored guest at a feast that you are setting for them. And then, in my experience, you see what happens. It's like the dialing code, and then you try to have an experience. And I find that these spirits and God forms respond very well to music and dancing, and the opportunity to be allowed to be festive at this moment. They really there's a lot of energy there for them around that type of activity. Now, All Hallows Night is something that comes before All Souls Night. So it's all the things that are holy, all the things that are holy. And rather than going into any particular traditions focus around this time, what I've chosen to do instead is to use this as an opportunity for you to use your new connection, or your strengthened connection with the Master of the Crossroads, to be able to call forth without any obstacle the beloved and the mighty dead. And there's a lot of us that we kind of get very big-headed about who this mighty and beloved dead are, that may come to this. And I'd like you to set aside any preconception that you have about who may come to attend this moment, and just let it be what it is. Again, heighten the opportunity for receptivity and see what there is. And we're asking the guardian of the gates, or by the power of that Master of the Crossroads, to open wide the gates for the beloved and the mighty dead. And once again, we're setting a feast out for them. And we could think of them almost as personal saints, those who we don't have to fall into the idea of it being saints of a particular kind of religion. But I do think a lot of this ritual protocol is shaped by the blended experience of both paganism and early Christianity, at least in the way that I understand it, and is not trying to underwrite one or the other, or erase one or the other, letting it just sit for what it is. In the end, it's whatever you feel comfortable doing, and you should do that. And lastly, we have the rite that happens on All Souls Night. So this is the point of this, is to really use these new connections that we've created with those who are members of these two bands of spirits, if we will. One is the master of the Crossroads, and their party and kin, and the other is the beloved and mighty dead, and the ability that they have to assist those spirits that are wandering or are unwell is not the word that I want. Let's just use the term lost. They're lost. There's many reasons and many traditions that speak to why this happens and how this happens and how we go about it. But the point that I'm trying to bring forward here is that opportunity that this moment presents for those who are well in spirit of these other groups to be able to assist those who are lost. And we're wanting to give them sustenance and move them towards light, and move them towards finding their place amongst the mighty and powerful dead. It's almost like they too will become saints, if you will. But we're trying to help them feast and learn and find peace. This is something, again, that I think is a spiritual component to necromancy, which is helping even those forms that appear unwell to us to find their own divine nature, if you will. And again, with each one of these, I do think that all of these forms respond very well to dancing and movement and song making, merrymaking at these times. The energy that we want to really bring forward is that we're setting a feast. There's no reason to have to do any of these. I feel like if anything about it makes you uncomfortable, probably best not to fuss about with it. But at the same time, in my experience, there's no reason to be uncomfortable. There is a precedent, though, for you being able, if you're engaging with spirits, particularly if you're doing any of these rites in your own home, that you should have a precondition of that is that you should know how to ward and cleanse your own home place. It should be warded well already. That's the context, at least, that I would be presupposing. I will maybe include some of the things that I've created to talk about doing this, but Florida water and Santa Paula wood, these are really powerful materia that we can draw on if we need to cleanse or purify our home. So there are lots of ways that we could go about doing that. But point being is that I think that if you're afraid already, then that's enough to stop you at this time. Maybe this is not the moment to engage with that practice. Um, but yes, I hope that it goes well, and in the end, that whatever you engage with is delightfully and delightfully successful. Think of it as an opportunity to engage, though. That's my ultimate mode that I think we really need to keep it with. So one last time, cheers to you. Thank you so much for participating. There'll be more to come. We'll speak soon.